back to the immediate interaction between the officers and the man who was sleeping in the vehicle and who apparently had been drinking. At that point, there was an option that the police department had, or the police officers had.
Hey, Mark, I want to interrupt for a moment, Mark. I want you to stay with us. The lawyers representing Rayshard Brooks are now speaking, L. Chris Stewart and Justin Miller. I want to listen in briefly.
And then I could go on and on about DeAndre Phillips, another murder down here, which involved APD, which still hasn't been decided or resolved yet. I could talk about Desmond Marrow, which still has not been resolved here in Georgia. I could go on to Alton Sterling, which we also represent, which years later still has not been resolved. And all of the other cases. And what it boils down to, black, white, Hispanic, whatever you are you not tired of seeing cases like this happen? We see from the protesters, we see from the people in the streets of all races now that people are sick of watching black men murdered. And before we even get into what happened last night, the one thing that nobody can disagree with is that it shouldn't have happened. But it did because the value of African-American males' lives in the inner city or wherever doesn't mean too much to officers nowadays. And it's sad. Because we look at things not just for the emotional effect of how horrible it is, but legally. In Georgia, a taser is not a deadly weapon. That's the law. That's what the cops are trained to do. It's not a deadly weapon. I've had cases where officers have used tasers on victims and they argue with us in court that tasers aren't deadly, that tasers aren't harmful. That's the case law here, that tasers are not deadly weapons. So before we even hear from their lawyers, who are going to say the same old thing they always say, you cannot have it both ways. You can't say he ran off with a weapon that could kill somebody when you say it's not deadly. You can't say you don't have other options. Where was he going to go? He was barely jogging away. You could have boxed him in. Support came in, I think, 2 minutes. He would have been boxed in and trapped. Why did you have to kill him? Was the officer embarrassed that he got his taser taken? Well, let your pride linger. Don't pull your gun quickly. Was he upset that he lost a little scuffle and out of spite he shot? We don't know yet. But the one thing we do know is that he had other options than shooting a man in the back. And we don't want to hear anything about, oh, he even pointed it backwards, because it's not a deadly weapon according to police officers and case law. He wasn't close enough to harm you with it. You could have run him down, but instead he got bullets in the back. A man that earlier that day was celebrating his daughter's 8th birthday at the arcade, who has 3 little girls who are 8, 2, and 1, and a stepson, 13, who we sit with today.
Which leads to more exposure and moments like this.
You know, the rapidly rising I don't know.
Joining me now, Chris Wallace, the anchor of Fox News Sunday and author of the new book, Countdown 19.
In Houston, oblivious to that her dad was knelt on and murdered. How many more examples will we need? The cameras aren't doing it. Y'all filming it isn't doing it. Covering it isn't doing it. People protesting isn't doing it. What is it going to take? How many more examples are we going to get? I actually thought that we were going to get over all this. I thought this was finally going to start ending with all these changes.
Right. I mean, things happen and we consume it with such velocity. I mean, I think clearly the coronavirus and the economic impact is going to stick around. You know, and I think the president will certainly be judged on how well looking in October and November, people think he has handled, but they won't blame him for all of it, but they're going to want a sense that either things seem to be improving or they're not. I think.
And as we are just getting this case, the details are just getting more horrific. Because there were multiple witnesses out there. We talked to some witnesses today who said that the officers went and put on plastic gloves and picked up their shell casings after they killed him, before rendering aid. We counted 2 minutes and 16 seconds before they even checked his pulse. And people wonder why the one's bad. Just watch the video as he lays there dying. The officers stand around. One kicks him and flips him over. And then the witnesses tell us that, which we can't see on camera, but they filmed it. They went and picked up the shell casings. I wonder why. So that all of you can't know how far away he was when they shot? So that you can't find their positions when they use that weapon? But they appear to be caring more about covering their tracks than providing aid. Aid that could have saved his life if allegedly he was taken to the hospital and died in surgery, but they didn't give that to him. So we agree with the mayor saying that the officer that fired the officer that fired his weapon should be terminated, and he should also be prosecuted. The family met with Paul Howard, and they've opened their investigation, and I could even say we want justice, but I don't even care anymore. I don't even know what that is. And I've been doing this for 15 years. I don't know what justice is anymore. Is it getting him arrested? Is it getting somebody fired? Is it a chief stepping down? I know that this isn't justice, what's happening in society right now. You know, it's just not much more we can say or do as a society. So people that are refusing change and not understanding why the time is now for complete systematic change, take a look. And then compare it to all the videos. Take a look. And then compare it to all the videos online where it was a white individual that had a deadly weapon that wasn't killed, which we've also been looking at today, trying to understand why didn't they get shot? And why did Rayshard have to when he's running? And that answer I don't have yet. Other than that, it's just tiring. And I'm sure everybody's tired of seeing it. You know, we're so concerned about trying to find a vaccine for the coronavirus. The world is pitching in. We're pitching in millions and millions and millions of dollars. Scientists from around the world are trying to help find a vaccine, but nobody's trying to find a vaccine for civil rights abuses. It's something that we're told to wait for. It'll come. Nobody's trying to find a vaccine for why officers pulled the trigger so quick on African Americans. There's no flood of money or scientists or the top experts or our leadership in this country trying to end that epidemic. But I guess that is because it doesn't hit close to home to the people that care. So once again, and I'll say it as the millionth time as y'all seen me fighting one of these cases, we'll fight for justice. We'll try and get the cop arrested or whatever it may be. Sue the city and see if they'll settle. I don't know. But we're just tired. And if you don't understand that, because you may be a different color, you may be a different gender, you may not be from Georgia, then you may be the problem.
I think the word that encapsulates everything that Chris just said to you is empathy. This is all that all of these families are asking for and that we're asking for as representatives of these families. Just a little empathy. A bit less scared, then we probably wouldn't have a dead client. And we wouldn't be here talking to you like we are right now. there are a lot of things, systemic things wrong with policing in this country. And I think that over the past few weeks, we've talked about a lot of them. You've seen a lot of them on tape. And like Chris said, we're tired. I mean, we will keep doing this as long as there's a need, but we don't want there to be a need to do this anymore. The first failing that I saw when I saw this tape was training. Because, just as Chris said, if a taser isn't a deadly weapon, then it's not a deadly weapon when I have it, it's not a deadly weapon when an officer has it, it's not a deadly weapon when anyone else has it. When our client has the taser, they're going to say it's a deadly weapon, and it's not. There were 2 officers, one of him, and their training failed them. That's number 1. Number 2, leadership failed them. And I don't want to see anyone lose their job, but maybe the police chief needed to resign because whatever they're doing from the top, it's not reaching the bottom. And if they are doing it correctly from the top, and that's what they're trying to get across to their officers, then it's not working and it needs to change immediately. Because this can't happen again. Policing in this country, in this city, needs to change to something more empathetic, something more community-based. Police are necessary, but the way that they are policing our communities is wrong, it's causing death, and we're not going to stand for it anymore. Obviously, you see that the people are not going to stand for it anymore. I think a lot of things and a lot of these minor changes are happening because people are scared. And they're scared for their things. They're scared for a building or a store. They're scared for a restaurant. But the lives of these people, of our people, of Americans, of black people, of human beings, in my opinion, are more important than any store or restaurant that is in Buckhead or Bankhead or anywhere else. That's number 2. And then the third thing I would say is fear. Listen, I don't know those 2 officers personally, right? But just from watching the tape, I could tell that they were scared. And it's understandable. That is a hard profession, policing. But if you have fear, you don't need to be a police officer. If you do not understand the community that you're policing in, you do not need to be a police officer. If you are not comfortable with black people, white people, brown, yellow, whatever people, you don't need to be a police officer. A police officer is as much of a counselor as they are anything else. And I believe that if we go back to the leadership and the training that I spoke of earlier, you'll see that these officers aren't taught that. They're taught to crack heads. And when they can't crack heads, they're taught to shoot. And that's resulting in death. And we can't have that anymore. And we won't have that anymore. So I don't think this is going to end anytime soon. And frankly, I want everyone watching and everybody here, to understand we're not asking for protesters not to go out and protest. We need to keep pushing. We need to let everyone know that this is unacceptable and we're not going to just move on to the next tragedy. This probably won't be the last tragedy, and that's a sad thing. But we're going to treat every single one like it shouldn't have happened. We're going to go as hard as we can for this one, like we're going for George Floyd and his daughter, and like we're going for Ahmaud Arbery and his mother, and like we're going for Alton Sterling and every other single case and single person that should be here today that's not here with us. Because at the end of the day, and this is what we get back to. I mean, if you look around and you see our firm, we are white, black, Asian, brown, yellow, green, whatever. It doesn't matter. White, black, Asian, brown, yellow, green, whatever. It doesn't matter. We're all people. And so if we can see that, we don't understand why the police can't see that. And there are some people who have now opened their eyes and woken up and they see that, and we think that's great. But we want you to put pressure on the police. Put pressure on the mayor, put pressure on your governors, put pressure on everyone to let them know you will not take this anymore. You're going to stand up. And this is not just black people, because we've been dealing with this our entire lives. This is for everyone else who hasn't been dealing with this, who's dealing with it now. Stand up with us, push with us, fight with us. When you see us in Minnesota, fight with us. And when you see us here in Atlanta and in Brunswick, fight with us. Because our fight is your fight. This is the United States of America. We're coming up on July 4th. And this is going to be a very weird July 4th for a lot of people. Very different. Because people are coming to the realization that America doesn't mean America for all Americans. And that's a problem. So keep pushing, fight with us, and hopefully we'll get some change. And this will be the last time we have to have a press conference about a dead black man killed by the police for no reason. Thank you.
Another thing, there was no count to 100 or whatever it is and walk this line. They said that they were just talking. And it seemed to be a decent conversation. And then all of a sudden, one of the officers grabbed him and told him he's under arrest. So this started from nothing. This wasn't a bank robbery in progress or anything violent. They just told him he was under arrest. And now I see that they're reporting, oh, it was a suspected DUI or he fell asleep blocking the line. He wasn't blocking the line. And they didn't even do a sobriety test from what the witnesses right there said. So why was he even under arrest? You want to know how this could have been avoided and all of the protests that are going to happen and all of this? Talk to him. Talk. Hey, buddy, you fell asleep in line. You okay? Why don't you pull your car over there and call an Uber? And then you walk over and you leave. Why is that so hard for police officers? A conversation. He wasn't doing anything crazy or violent or harming anyone. Hey, buddy, I think you've had something to drink. Maybe, but I guess they didn't feel like doing a sobriety test. Pull over there, call an Uber. I guarantee you, but I guess they didn't feel like doing a sobriety test. Pull over there, call an Uber. I guarantee you that happens hundreds of times a night in college towns with young white kids or other places in America. We don't get that benefit of the doubt. So not only do officers like that destroy the image of policing, which I have always held in a high standard, even though I'm always going against the officers, but y'all are even starting to break me. And most of y'all know that I'll get up there and I say I have respect for officers and, policing, but Jesus, y'all, like even I'm starting to lose hope. And that's hard. But y'all got any questions? Not much.
So, Chris, earlier today, GBI released a video of the surveillance video from Wendy's, and one of the things they pointed out was what you mentioned, the taser in Mr. Brooks' hand, him reaching back and pointing. Why do you think GBI released that video, and can you go into more detail why you released that video? And
they were just releasing the full surveillance video of, the parking lot. I'm sure there's more video. Like I said, witnesses have video of some of these horrific actions. In that video that GBI released, you also can sit there and count how long they let that body lay on the ground before touching him or even trying to assist him. So, the video is helpful for us. It's also helpful to show that they were far apart when he's running and pointing backwards. But the case law in Georgia, a taser's not a deadly weapon. So they can't say it's not like he was running off with a gun. It's not a deadly weapon. I lose cases against officers who use it on my clients because it's not a deadly weapon. And I'm saying that officers who use it on my clients because it's not a deadly weapon. And I'm saying that, they shouldn't have done it. But you just can't have it both ways in this. If it's not a deadly weapon, his life was not in immediate harm when he fired that shot. Just was not. It wasn't. And I watched one of the most conservative police chiefs commentating today, and even he said that there were other options he could have done, and that a taser isn't a deadly weapon. Ask Taser, is a taser a deadly weapon? I promise you they're going to say no.
Chris, what you said, the more you find out, the more you get. What are some examples?
Well, there's just so many witnesses that saw it. You know, we didn't know that they picked up their shell casings before GBI got there to investigate the scene, before, I don't know.
Sorry, Chris, I haven't seen the video. Is there concrete audio of any of the conversations between law enforcement and Mr. Brooks?
We haven't gotten all of the audio yet. I think the district attorney's office is also talking to all these witnesses, so.
So he did run, Mr. Brooks. Can you speak to why that might have been, or reason behind it?
Yeah, there could be 1,000 reasons for someone running from the police, right? So just imagine that if you're sleeping in your car because you're trying to drink something off and you get officers knocking on your window hard, right? The current climate of police officer and black male interaction is not the best, right? So that might scare you at that time of night. So yes, you
Good evening, I'm
stand up.
Joshua Johnson at NBC News World Headquarters in New York. We're watching a news conference from the attorneys representing the family of Rayshard Brooks, the 27-year-old black man shot dead last night by Atlanta police officers in a fast food drive-through line. Let's go back and listen.
And they stopped him, right? So yes, getting away from a situation that could be detrimental to you also turned into another situation that was detrimental to you. It's a no-win situation. You can't get out of it. And so that's probably what happened, but like I said, we can't speak to it.
And I always try and look at, from these situations, to look at how, was it justified for the officer? Because I don't ever want to look at something just totally unfairly. And there's just no excuse in this one. If they be shot while the tussle was going on and, you know, they said, oh, he reached for my gun, and, you know, that's normally how these happen. They're rolling around on the ground or there's a fight for the gun and then they shoot right then. That's not what happened. If this would have happened while they were all rolling on the ground and you hear someone say gun, he's reaching for my gun, okay, maybe. That didn't happen. They didn't feel like their life was in danger while they were tussling on the ground or rolling around and grabbing things. No, they waited until he ran off. So their justification went out the door after they let him run.
We also, it gets personal, you know, and this is a thing when you're in the field, and we understand this, that it is a personal thing. It gets personal to them. But as the professional in the situation, they have to divorce themselves from that emotional aspect of that job. Because if you don't, someone can die, like we saw today, or like we saw with that officer in George Floyd. It can get personal. We understand there's combat, there are big guys wrestling and fighting, but at a certain point, the professional in you has to come out, and you have to calm down and be the professional and show that you have training, which hasn't happened and definitely didn't happen last night.
What more can you tell us about Mr. Brooks, who he was, what the reason, what his background was?
Father, was working at a tortilla place, actually. Was working at a tortilla place, actually. Family loved him to death. We had more family members at that house today than I could count. A ton of brothers and sisters that love him more than life.
He was supposed to take his daughter skating today.
Yeah.
For her birthday.
It's just, and I'm sick of sitting in somebody's house and their little kid is playing with us and we're sitting there trying to laugh with a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old or 8-year-old, knowing, you know, that they'll never see their dad again. Man, I'm literally sick of it.
She had on, when we were there today, she had her birthday dress on because she was waiting for her dad to come pick her up, to take her to go skating. Yesterday, her and her dad went, she got her nails done and her toes done. They got something to eat. And today she was waiting on that. So while we were over there, they had a birthday party for her. You know, today there was a birthday. Yeah, 8th birthday today. with cupcakes while we were sitting there talking to her mom about why her dad's not coming home. That's the part of it that we see every day that everybody doesn't see. And that's the part that just, it hits you right here. It's terrible.
Chris, when you think of Walter Scott, you think of 5 years ago, over 5 years ago.
That's what this
Stay
is.
here 20 years. 20 years for killing a man. What do you say about that?
I mean, that's literally the case that popped in my mind the whole time I was sitting there today, and Justin and I talked about it. It's just like Walter Scott. You know, people forgot about that case because it's been so long and it was so horrific. They said the same thing. Oh, he took my taser, and I shot him while we were wrestling for the taser. And then once we got our hands on the video, we saw that he shot him in the back, 30 yards away. And in that case, they tried the whole taser, he could have killed me with the taser argument, and it didn't work. So it literally brings back memories of Walter Scott, even watching him get shot in the back, just like Walter Scott. And then it was really horrible hearing the witnesses say that they were picking up shell casings or tampering with the scene, whatever they were doing, because that happened to Walter Scott. The officer went and threw the taser close to the dead body. So it's just horrible to be reliving the Walter Scott case again.
We don't think this is, these are one-offs. We know they're not. We're seeing them more and more, and that's not because society is getting worse, just because technology is getting better, right? There are more cameras everywhere, so we're seeing more of this stuff. But it's the same stuff. It's been happening. The difference is you can't lie in your report because there's a camera that's going to get you, right? You can't make up some story because there's a camera that's going to get you. You can't throw a taser close to somebody because there's a camera that's going to come get you. We saw today what happened last night. We saw it. And while Mr. Brooks was not perfect, he could have done a couple things too. And we're not saying he couldn't have. But the officer had the last best chance to stop that from happening. He had the most training to stop that from happening. And he didn't do that, and that resulted in our client's death.
Is there anything the witnesses were able to tell you about what led to a struggle? Like what was said in the car? Or what?
No, they're confused because they thought that the conversation appeared civil or decent. They didn't, see him screaming at the cops or doing anything. And then out the blue, they said they just tried to arrest him. And of course he got upset and pulled away. Like, why? What are y'all doing? And then it went from there. And I see it too many times. If you're not going to explain why you're going to arrest somebody or tell me, I'm not turn on. Why am I getting arrested? I can ask you what's going on. Why can't you have a conversation with him about why he's being arrested?
You say the witness told you he was dragged out of the car?
No, they were speaking outside of the vehicle from what they said. So he willingly got out. But like I said, this just happened yesterday. We're still talking to people, but every witness, white, black, they're just blown away because they said it should not have happened. And that there was no reason for him to shoot him while he was running off. This wasn't a violent crime. They had his ID. They knew where he lived. They knew what kind of car he was. They have the car. Where's he going? But it's just because, the value of life is gone somewhere. It's like a video game where you just think you shoot somebody and it's not an actual father or a human being. I'm just starting to lose faith.
I've known you for years. I've never seen you like this. I know you're tired, you're sad, you're mad. Not to speak for you, but you're still ready to fight.
Yeah, oh no. I mean, that's not going to change. I mean, we'll keep fighting these as long as we have to, and making sure people get fired or resign or whatever, or get put in jail, because, we have to do our part to try and make it stop. But the one thing that Justin and I really realizing is it's a national effort. Black, white, male, female, the only way this is going to change is if everybody keeps coming together. People who are conservative or didn't want to speak up or say anything, you've got to speak up. You just got to speak up.
You mentioned training earlier. Is it time to overhaul training altogether? I mean, it seems like all these cases, people in the office actually do have training. Is it the nature of the training, or is it?
It's and Chris, we've covered a million of these. What is, we know there are so many loopholes. There is no clear time of when to shoot or not to shoot. It's always in the mind of that officer. Well, sometimes the mental state of that officer is not okay. They're not well. They're not, they're too angry, they're too upset. It should be, this wouldn't have happened if you cannot shoot someone unless they're pointing a gun at you. Or unless they're brandishing a gun. You just can't shoot them. You can't shoot them if they have a taser. You can't shoot them if they have a knife and they're 50 feet away. Or you go to jail. There aren't definite rules like that. Lawyers have rules. Doctors have definite rules. You can't leave something in somebody's body. But with police officers, it's so much gray area. When being a police officer is the most powerful job in this country. There's no other job where you could take someone's life, liberty, or freedom. There's no job that is as powerful as a police officer. They should be up on the standard of doctors and lawyers and looked at like that, but they're not. And that's got to change.
To the training question you just asked, it does need to be overhauled. We need to focus more on de-escalation and less on militarization. The police officers, they walk around in these neighborhoods, they have flak jackets on, some of them have ARs and other assault type rifles. They are armed to the teeth, and then they're walking around people, intimidating and inciting fear. There used to be a time when police officers would walk around and you know their name, they know your name, they know where you went to school and your mom and all that kind of stuff. That time is over, especially in the black community. I mean, I don't really remember a time that has been the case in the black community, and now that time is completely over. So we need to focus the police department more on de-escalation. And if officers are going to be in the community, check and see how close these two officers live to that community that they were policing. I guarantee you they live nowhere near there, right? And if they did, check and see what kind of contacts they had in the community. Did they go to church there? Did their kids go to school in that community? I guarantee you the answer is no. Because if they did, they would understand that, hey, these are people too, and maybe I could deal with them the same way I deal with the people who live close to me. And that has a lot to do with empathy, like I said before, and training for de-escalation and not military.
Ideas over what changes we think could end this from having handled so many of these. Because something's got to happen other than just lawsuits and asking for arrest. But thank y'all. As I said, the family will be speaking on Monday. They needed some time. Thank y'all.
All right, there you have it. Very strong words from these two lawyers representing Rayshard Brooks, the 27-year-old African-American man who was shot and killed by police last night at a Wendy's drive-through restaurant. I want to show our viewers what's going on the streets of Atlanta right now. Large crowds are gathering right now. They're clearly seeking to shut down Interstate 75. Natasha Chen, before we get to analysis of what we just heard from these two lawyers, very strong words from Chris Stewart and Justin Miller. Tell us what you're seeing right now. You're on the scene for us. What is this, Interstate 75?
Yeah, exactly. So the protesters have tried to get onto the freeway. They were going up the hill, up the ramp, obviously with officers trying to stop that from happening. And then you have another group of people, crowds, that are still gathered on the street below. So they're sort of scattered throughout the area, all along the street close to the Wendy's where this incident first happened. And there are
been thus far in Atlanta. One of the attorneys, Mr. Stewart, Chris Stewart, was asked what his thoughts were about Atlanta's police chief resigning today. He said, quote, "I don't care." He later said with regards to this whole situation in terms of black men being shot by officers, in his words, quote, "I'm just starting to lose faith." And a lot of what we heard this evening had to do with perhaps that loss of faith, that they will prosecute this case on behalf of the family. But in addition, they will also be making their own suggestions about what needs to be done more systemically to deal with police-involved shootings. This is also the law firm that is representing the family of Ahmaud Arbery. This is also the law firm involved in the case of Alton Sterling. So they have probably seen more of these cases and consoled more black mothers and tried to talk around more small children who do not know their fathers are dead yet than they probably care to recall.
Had 6 cops fired last week, a week and a half ago, for using a taser on a couple in a car, and the district attorney charged them with using deadly physical force. 5 of those cops of the 6 were black. This wasn't a black and white issue. They fired them saying they used deadly force. So that conflicts with what these guys said already. But you know, real quick, Judge, everybody's calling for reforms all over the country today. I have to tell you, I think there's some reforms that need to be talked about. And I think the mayors, these radical left-wing, you know, progressive mayors and governors, they could start with reforms like, tell the thugs in your community, don't attack our police, don't assault our police, don't resist arrest, don't obstruct or interfere with an arrest, don't run from the police, don't run cops over with your car, don't take their tasers, don't take their weapons, don't take their guns, because if you do, we're going to use force. And we're not going to lose if we use force.
All right, Dan Bongino, I mean, you heard what the commissioner just said. I mean, police are trained to respond in a certain way. I mean, they're not trained to kill unless they think they're confronted, reasonably think they're confronted with deadly physical force. That's going to be the issue for me, it appears, if there's any trial here. But you've been a police officer, you've been a Secret Service agent. What do you think is the problem, if there is a problem at all?
Well, regarding the press conference we just heard by the attorneys, there were a couple of things they mentioned that are, I'm sorry, Judge, again, the man died, it's tragic. I'm not in any way making light of what happened. He was a father. But what they said just wasn't true. And that doesn't make the emotional, obviously, surroundings of the situation, doesn't make what's non-true true. At one point, they seemed to suggest that, you know, well, it's understandable that he's trying to get away. Well, that may be for him, but it is, in fact, illegal. Resisting arrest is a crime. If you don't like that, change the laws, and good luck having anyone arrested in your community ever. I just want to be clear what you're suggesting if you think that that's not a crime. You're suggesting that anyone should be able to throw blows at the cops, as we saw in that video, take their weapons and run away from them? Okay, now does someone deserve to die from that? That's absolutely categorically not what I'm saying.
Not. Yeah.
But another thing they said, they seem to suggest, and I know you know this and the commissioner as well, that, well, there should be some kind of an equal level of force applied here. That's not how the use of force continuum works, Judge. If someone turns around and points at your taser they stole from you after assaulting you, at you, and points it at your face, you don't have to pull your taser and get in a taser fight. If they pull a knife out, you don't get into a knife fight. You are allowed to use an equal or superseding amount of force to stop what is happening. If the subject dies, yes, that's tragic. Nobody shoots to kill. Cops aren't trained to shoot to kill. They're trained to shoot to stop the use of force. Yeah.
But I'm going to go to the commissioner now. If what you're saying is that police officers in Atlanta who were fired last week by the chief were fired because they used tasers and the chief believes that that's equivalent to deadly physical force, I mean, that certainly isn't necessarily going to play in a courtroom. The questions that they're going to ask in a courtroom is, did the police think that they were being confronted with deadly physical force, and did they feel they needed to shoot this person? But beyond that, I want to read something from CBS 46 in Atlanta. They say officers administered a field sobriety test, which Brooks reportedly failed. When they attempted to make an arrest, a struggle ensued as Brooks resisted. So that's somewhat contrary, Commissioner, to what the lawyers were saying.
Yeah, well, that's because the investigation hasn't been concluded yet. In fact, the investigation just started. So it would be nice, before you fired them, before you got rid of them, before you bashed them in the press, like the mayor has done, you may want to conclude the investigation. But I want to touch on just one more thing, and this is what Dan was getting to, I think. That taser, although it may not be considered deadly physical force, anytime you have the ability to incapacitate a police officer with a taser, and then you can go for his sidearm, then, in my opinion, the officer has the right to stop you. And in this case, that's what they did.
Yeah,
All
Judge,
right,
can I,
I'd like you to take a
Bernie's
listen to
absolutely
what
right. Judge, listen, this is important. A gun comes to every single fight a police officer's in. It's brought there by the police officer. If you hit him with his baton, Bernie's absolutely correct, or incapacitate him, you can take his gun. The police officer brings the gun to the gunfight every single time. What Bernie said is absolutely accurate.
All right. I want you both to take a listen to the sound from one of the attorneys for Rayshard Brooks.
If this officer today had been a little more empathetic and a bit less scared, then we probably wouldn't have a dead client. And we wouldn't be here talking to you like we are right now.
All right. I'll go to you, Commissioner Carrick. What do you think of that?
I think it's ludicrous. For one, how does he know what the officers were thinking at the time? And I have to tell you, Judge, unless you've been in a position yourself where you've been overpowered by a prisoner or a suspect or a target of an investigation, unless you've been there, you have no conception of what that's like. You're afraid for your life. You're afraid to have your gun taken from you. You're put in a position where you're monitored and watched by cameras all over the place. And Monday morning quarterbacks like those lawyers talking all that garbage, that they've never been in that position and they don't have the courage to be in it.
Yeah.
You know,
Judge, Bernie's absolutely
don't
correct.
you think also, Dan, hold on a second. I know you're agreeing. I could see that you were agreeing, but don't you think also that some of the, some of what's going on in society today, where police are vilified? I mean, they're treated like almost less than human. Water thrown at them in New York City and cans thrown at them, and they can't do anything. Don't you think that adds to the resistance of some people to the police, thinking that, yeah, I don't have to listen to this person. Its authority is gone. Respect is gone. And, there are people who are to blame for that.
Judge, respect is a two-way street. And yes, we do have the most powerful job in the world, police officers. There's no doubt. We have to do better. We have the power to take a life and take someone's freedom. We have to do better. We owe it to the communities we police and pay us. We're not allowed to make mistakes. I know it's hard. People in baseball, they strike out 7 out of 10 times and they're a hero. You cannot mess up as a police officer. You have them. Even President Trump does not have the power of a police officer. We have to do better. I get that. But respect is a two-way street. These are the finest men and women I have ever worked with.
No,
Judge, it's
what I'm
important.
saying
These are the
is-
best.
No, wait a minute, Dan. What I'm saying is that in certain communities, they have been trained to hate the police so much that they don't respect the police, and therefore they get in trouble because the police end up doing what they're trained to do.
Judge, you are absolutely right. It is a two-way street. You have to understand, these are just their moms, their dads. There are some bad seeds, I get it. But these are people's brothers and sisters. They're soccer coaches. These guys were in the community responding to a radio run. They didn't know this man. This wasn't their neighbor. They didn't stop next door to say hello. They were there because someone was concerned. Why do you think they were doing this? Do you know how many of these guys are hurt and injured or killed every year? I said up at that Capitol Hill testimony, in your job, thank God you don't get a text 3-4 times a year like Bernie and I get saying, hey, remember Officer so-and-so? Yeah, he got hit by a car. He's in critical. Yeah, remember Officer so-and-so? Yeah, he's dead. You don't get those calls, and thank the Lord every day you don't.
It's a dangerous,
you get them, we do.
dangerous job.
And it's a two-way street.
Well,
You're right, Judge. Show some respect for police officers, and they'll show you respect back. And if they don't, then file a complaint. You're entitled to do that.
Commissioner, today we saw in Galveston County, there was a meeting in Texas, there was a meeting of all the police chiefs and the sheriffs with the community. They started the conversation. But that's not something that's new. I mean, this has been happening for years, has it not, community policing?
It's been happening for years, and in most communities, most I say, you have phenomenal relationships between the police and the community leaders. The problem I see in Atlanta is somewhat like we see in Seattle. In Seattle, they took over a 6-block area of the occupied zone, if you will, a bunch of thugs. In Atlanta, it looks like they took over the mayor and the city council, because the mayor is victimizing the thugs and villainizing the cops who go out there every day and put their lives on the line for people they don't know. They don't give a damn what skin color they are. They responded to a job last night. A guy resisted arrest. He assaulted them. He attacked them. He ran. He attempted to shoot the cop with a taser, and he died as a result, which is tragic. But it wouldn't have happened if he didn't resist.
Yeah, and I think in the end, you know, and obviously sympathies to the family of Rayshard, but at the same time, people need to understand that law enforcement has this power. Bernie Carrick, Dan Bongino, great guests for this segment tonight. Thank you so much. And we have an...
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, is that it wasn't, right? And these police officers, what we're seeing and what we continue to hear is that I feared for my life. And then we see video of another black man, another black person being shot in the back. The man had a taser, and it was probably evident that maybe he was drunk. He was scared. We're coming off of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd, right? Like, if I'm a black man and police are knocking on my window, I'm me and a police is knocking on my window, I'm terrified in that moment, right? I may run because my fight or flight mode is going. And so the mayor is absolutely right. There was no reason to shoot him. They should have ran him down, right? You want to stop him, run him down. Police need a better way than pulling the trigger. They need to learn de-escalation skills. They need to learn something else. And if you are in fear of your job, you're afraid of black people, then this is not the profession that you should be in. I'm tired of hearing that over and over and over again.
We're speaking to Danielle Moody of the podcast Democracy-ish, Rashad Robinson of Color of Change, and Marlon Walker of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Everyone, please do stick around as our breaking news coverage continues.